Okay, so basically, for our last lecture, we have looked at basically the overview of this chapter. Okay, and then uh, the last part of the last lecture was we looked at the mechanism of hormone action. Okay, so we know that for hormone, it we have to know the composition of the hormone, whether the hormone is made up of protein, so that is polypeptide. Okay, polypeptide. So if the protein is made up of polypeptide chains, it forms globular proteins, and because it forms globular proteins, so therefore it can easily diffuse into your blood to be carried through your bloodstream to reach the target organs with the receptor for that hormone. So for this type of hormone, you have to know that the receptor is located on the plasma membrane of the target cell. Okay, so and the binding site for the hormone, it must be facing the site, the extracellular site, because the hormone is on the outside of the cell. So the hormone binds to the receptor and causes a series of reaction to occur inside cell. So a cascade of reaction. So that we call it as signal transduction. So the consequences of that reaction, it causes a series of reaction to occur to activate one enzyme, and that enzyme activate another enzyme, activate another enzyme. That is a series of reaction, cascade of reaction, signal transduction, that causes the cell to do certain work. Okay, so one of the work that it involves, it may also activate gene expression. Okay, or for example, for another type of hormone is hormone that is made up of modified amino acids. Okay, so modified amino acids can form two types of hormone, whether it is water soluble or lipid soluble. Okay, so if it's again water soluble, the same mechanism as globular protein, it has to bind to receptor on plasma membrane, and then and causes a series of reaction to occur. And then example of that is epinephrine. Okay, so epinephrine, it causes, for example, it involves in fight or flight reactions. Okay, so when you are in a state of shock, for example, you need instant energy. You just came across a snake, can, so uh, you have to run away from that snake, for example. So and then you need instant energy. Okay, so so the release of epinephrine causes, for example, cells to the liver cells to break down glycogen into glucose, so that the glucose can be released into your bloodstream as source of energy. Okay, for your muscle cells. Okay, to be able to, for you to run. Okay, so another type of hormone is, it is made up of um, steroid. Okay, steroid hormones. So steroid hormone is lipid soluble hormone. Okay, so lipid soluble hormone, when it is secreted out of endocrine glands, okay, cells of endocrine gland, it travels in your bloodstream by binding to transport protein or carrier protein, because it is lipid soluble, it is not water soluble. So what your blood is mostly, most of the composition, it consists of water. Okay, so uh, so therefore for the lipid soluble hormones, they need to bind to transport protein to be transferred or carried by your blood until it reaches the target cells. Okay, so once it reaches the target cell, because it is lipid soluble, it can diffuse into the target cells. And then for this one, you have to take note that the receptor is located inside cell. Okay, so it can either be located in the cytoplasm, or it can be either located in the uh, nucleus. Okay, so the hormone binds to the receptor, causing the formation of hormone receptor complex. And then if the that complex is formed in the cytoplasm, it then travels into the nucleus. The nuclear, it has a nuclear envelope that has pores, nuclear pore, so that hormone receptor complex enters into the nucleus through the nuclear pore, and then it binds to specific genes in your DNA, causing a certain gene to be activated or certain gene to be suppressed. Okay, so for example, if that hormone receptor complex bind to the gene and causes gene to be expressed or activated, it causes transcription translation to occur. Transcription, it causes the formation of mRNA. From that mRNA, it leads to translation to produce certain protein. Okay, vice versa, if suppression were to occur, no protein will be produced. Okay, so these two mechanism of hormone action, water soluble and also lipid soluble, you have to know the mechanisms. Okay, so if you go through your questions in your workbook, so there will be I haven't yet go through the question, but there must be question that ask you on the mechanisms. So if you look at the question, the marks usually will be 3 to 4 marks. Okay, so you have to explain that mechanism, those keywords you have to take note. Tempat kat mana receptor tu berada, kan. So semua tu you have to take note all these important points. Okay, so basically for today's so that's what we have covered last time. And then so this table, it shows you the comparison between this lipid and water soluble hormone. And then okay, so for our lecture today, we are going to look at the major endocrine glands. Okay, so but for this part, basically you have to do some memorization. Nak tak nak mesti kena hafal dia. Dia banyak, part ni banyak kena hafal lah. Okay, so after we have finished this hormone part, we are going to look at the neuron part. So this one is more on mechanisms. Okay, so mechanism, you have to know how impulse is generated, is transmitted, and then the different types of synapse. Okay, how to stop transmission of impulse. Okay, there's a graph of action potential that you have to know the how it is generated. Okay, so basically for this chapter, it consists of two part, hormone part and the neuron part. Okay. Okay. Still tak ramai lagi yang join, baru 45. So can you please remind your class, especially for the class rep, please remind your group to join. Okay, saya tengok kat list tadi 45 so daripada saya apa nama jadi tolak 2, so jadi 43 lah. So there's some of you that have not yet joined. Okay, so let's look at this diagram. Basically, in this diagram, it shows you all the different endocrine glands. Okay, so endocrine glands are glands that is responsible to produce and secrete. Okay, produce and secrete hormones. But okay, there are also endocrine glands that function to only secrete the hormone. Dia tak menghasilkan. Okay, so you have to know, ada endocrine gland yang dia menghasilkan dan dia secrete. So produce and secrete is two different things. Okay, like for example, hypothalamus. Okay, so hypothalamus, it is composed of neurons. Okay, because hypothalamus composed of neurons, the cells of the hypothalamus, because it is neuron, it is capable of generating and transmitting impulse, and at the same time it can also produce hormones, so that we call it as neurosecretory cells. Okay, neurosecretory cells for the hypothalamus lah. So because the hypothalamus, it is made up of neurosecretory cells, so the cell body, okay, so the cell body of that neuron is located in the hypothalamus, but the axon is it extend into the pituitary glands. Okay, pituitary gland, it has two part, the anterior and the posterior part. Anterior and posterior. Posterior is posterior belakang lah, anterior depan. Okay, so So the axon of the neuron that extend from the hypothalamus will enter into the posterior part of pituitary gland. Okay, so it causes the posterior part of pituitary gland to only secretes the hormone. It doesn't produce. It secretes the hormone which is initially produced in the hypothalamus. So that one we are going to look at later. Okay. So, and then hypothalamus, we have looked at this, the one of the role of the hypothalamus in chapter reproductive system, where one of the hormone it produces is GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. So, which causes the anterior pituitary to secrete two hormones for both male and female, which is estrogen and progesterone. Okay, where if you look at the location for the location of this pituitary gland, it is located in your brain. But where is the target organ? It will trigger, or it will flow through your bloodstream until it reaches the target organ, which is the gonads. Okay, so for female it is the ovary, for male it is the testis. Okay, so nampak tak ada jauh nak kena travel. So it has to be transported through your blood circulation, through the circulatory system. Okay. So FSH and LH, for example, for female, it causes follicle to grow each month until it leads to the process of ovulation to release the secondary oocyte. Okay, for male, okay, the target organ is the testis, which one of the effects is that causes testis to produce testosterone and lead to the formation of gametes, which is the sperm. The process of spermatogenesis. Okay, and then pineal gland is located here. Later we are going to look at the hormone it produces, it secretes, and then here is the thyroid glands. Okay, so thyroids, if S9 you have done your mouse dissection, so I hope you have dissected and looked through and you can find these different types of glands. Okay, so if you were to dissect a mouse at the neck area, can, so you open up and then you will see that there's this the thyroid glands. So thyroid gland, and then below that you will see the trachea. Okay, and then just below the trachea there's the esophagus. Okay, so if you manage to go through during your dissection of the mouse. Okay. And then on the surface of the thyroid glands, there's another endocrine glands, kan? So dia yang warna kuning ni, kan? So it is, we call it as parathyroid glands. Okay, so these two glands, for example, one of the function is to regulate the calcium level in your blood. Okay, calcium level in your blood. So later we are going to look at a bit of the mechanism, how calcium level is regulated. And then here is the thymus. Okay, so thymus. Again, if you are dissecting mouse and you manage to locate the heart. Okay, so for example, this is the heart of the mouse, or us humans, samalah heart. Okay, so just above the heart, okay, you will see the thymus. Okay, so the thymus is, for example, if you remember in the previous chapter where we looked at the lymphatic system. Okay, so one of the organ that involves in lymphatic system is the thymus. So thymus ni dia terlibat dalam lymphatic system, dia terlibat dalam immune system, dia terlibat dalam endocrine gland, hormones. Okay, so it produce and secrete hormones, and also it is the location where T lymphocyte matures. Okay, so that one we are going to look at in the immune system chapter. So, and then here you have your kidney. So on top of your kidney there will be the adrenal glands. Okay, so adrenal gland, it has two regions, the outer region, the cortex, and also the medulla. Sama macam kidney kan, kidney ada cortex, kidney ada medulla. Cortex is the outer part. Okay, medulla is the inner part. So both of these region of the adrenal glands, it produces different hormones. Okay, based on the condition of your body. Okay, so hormones that are secreted instantly and hormones that are secreted over time due to, for example, stress. Okay, so both of the hormones secreted, both of the region of the adrenal gland secrete hormone basically when you are under stress. Macam tu lah. Okay, so sama ada stres yang tiba-tiba jadi ataupun stres yang berpanjangan, satulah, right? So adrenal glands. So that is one of the functions of the hormone secreted by the adrenal glands. And then we have the pancreas. Okay, so pancreas is if you were to observe during your mouth dissection, so this is the stomach. Okay, so you have the esophagus running down, and then you have your stomach, for example. And if you were to look closely, the pancreas is located near the stomach here. Okay, so kita ada stomach kan, your stomach, and then from that stomach it enters into your small intestine. Okay, so small intestine, the first part of the small intestine is the duodenum. So that region of the small intestine, it has to receive enzymes secreted by the pancreas. So pancreas is just located just below the stomach before it enters into the duodenum. So kat sini bahagian dia. Okay, sini roughly. Okay, so apart from the pancreas secreting enzyme for digesting your food, for absorption in the small intestine, it also produces and secrete enzymes. Okay, so pancreas ni dia bertindak sebagai, it function also as endocrine glands and exocrine glands. Endocrine for hormone production and secretion, but exocrine gland is for the production and secretion of enzymes. Okay, so those are the different endocrine glands. Okay, so you have to know the different hormones it secretes, the function of the hormone secreted by all these glands. Okay, so this part you have to do a bit of memorizing. Okay, so this table, it shows you all the just to organize. Okay, so you have the endocrine glands, you have the hormones secreted by the endocrine glands, the type of macromolecules that made that is the component of the hormones. For example, here oxytocin. Okay, so oxytocin, it is peptide hormone. Okay, we have for example, hormones that are made up of steroids are the sex hormone, androgen, estrogen, progesterone, and there's the epinephrine, norepinephrines. They are hormones and also considered as neurotransmitters. Okay, so amines. Okay, so and then this is modified amino acids. Okay, so it is epinephrine. It is water soluble. Okay, water soluble, and then thyroxine. It is lipid soluble, right? Ada dalam you all punya awal-awal nota ni. Mana dia hilang? Okay. Thyroxine, it is amines, but it is lipid soluble. Okay. So you just go through this table, kan? So to look at the different glands, the type of hormone it secretes, okay, and then the function, the action, okay, of that hormones and how it is regulated. For example, kan, if we were to look at the anterior pituitary, so you have the hypothalamus, kan? So we have looked at previously the location of the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus, it is made up of neuron cells. Okay, neuron cells that are capable of generating impulse, and at the same time it can also produce and secrete hormones. Okay, so produce hormones. So extend the neurons, nampak warna hijau ni kan? So the neurons, the cell body of that neuron, okay, will extend into axon. So the axon terminal will be in the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, so the function of the posterior pituitary gland is to secrete hormones produced by the hypothalamus. So that's why here it says that the posterior is regulated by the nervous system. Okay, it is regulated by the nervous system. So you look at the hormone secreted by the posterior pituitary. It is oxytocin. So oxytocin is the hormone that has to be secreted due to transmission of impulse. It has to be secreted instantly. For example, during labor, during childbirth. Okay, it causes the uterine muscle to contract and contract even more until the baby is born, is pushed out. Okay. Another hormone that is secreted by the posterior due to for example, it is regulated by water balance, and it is also secreted by the posterior pituitary, which is ADH. And then anterior, bahagian depan kan, it is made up of cells that produce and secretes its hormone. Produce and secrete its hormone. Dia hasilkan hormon dia secrete sendiri. Tapi posterior, it secretes the hormone which is produced by the hypothalamus. So beza kat sini. So the cells, the cells are also different. So this is cells, we call it as epithelial cells or endothelial. Sekejap kita tengok. Endocrine cells. Okay, endocrine cells, which is endocrine cells. We call it as endocrine cells. Tapi kalau tengok kat sini kan, so hypothalamus, this is the cell body of the neuron, and then this is the axon extend into the posterior. So beza okay. So for the anterior, bahagian depan kan, so it is made up of endocrine cell that produce and secrete its own hormone. So those are the difference. Dia boleh tanya the difference between posterior, anterior pituitary. So you have to know the differences. But this is the table to show you. Anterior, it is made up of epithelial cells. Okay, where it is endocrine cells, which is epithelial cells. Jenis dia adalah epithelial cells. Okay. So and then these are all the different types of hormones secreted by the produced and secreted by the anterior pituitary. So most of it is made up of proteins. Okay, all of it is made up of proteins. Okay, so this is how the hormone is regulated. And then if we look at the hormone, these two hormones, for example, FSH and LH. Okay, so in order for these two hormones to be produced and secreted, it depends on the hormone secreted by the hypothalamus. So that's why it says here it is regulated by hypothalamic hormones. Okay, so the hypothalamus secretes, produce and secrete GnRH and causes anterior pituitary to produce and secrete FSH and LH. Macam itulah. Okay. So the hormones which is produced by the anterior is regulated by the hormone secreted by the hypothalamus. Okay. So these are all the different hormones, the function, and then we have the pineal gland which function to produce the hormone melatonin. Okay, so it is a type of amine. So it is to regulate your body. Okay, rhythmic activity. Okay, so by having this hormone, you know that okay, so this is during night time, so your body has to rest. Okay, so this is during daytime, so you have to do certain activities. Okay, so your body know that the time of day kan, so ni malam, ni siang, macam tu. Okay, so rhythmic activities, right? So and then we have the thyroid gland, and then parathyroid at the neck region. So this is basically the function is to regulate metabolism and calcium level for these two glands. Okay, and then it is regulated by TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid is stimulating hormone is secreted by the anterior pituitary. So anterior pituitary secretes the hormone TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which the target organ is the thyroid glands. Okay, so this hormone basically, because TSH, it causes another endocrine gland to produce another hormone. This one we call it as tropic hormone. So an endocrine gland produces hormones that the hormone causes another endocrine gland to produce another hormone. So that is, we call it as tropic gland. GnRH by the hypothalamus is considered as tropic glands. Okay, secreted by the hypothalamus, causes the anterior pituitary to secrete FSH. FSH on another hand, it is considered also as tropic hormone because the target organ is the ovary and causes the ovary to secrete estrogen. Macam tu kan. So that term we call it as tropic hormones. Okay. Endocrine gland produces hormone. That hormone is tropic hormone if it causes another hormone to secrete hormones. Another gland to secrete hormones. Okay. Tropic hormone. So that is the term that you have to know. And then we have the thymus. So it secretes the hormone thymosin to stimulate T cell development. So as we know, the thymus is the location of T cell maturation. Kan? So it secretes this hormone thymosin. And then adrenal gland, it has two regions. The middle part. Okay, so the middle part is the adrenal medulla. The outer part is the adrenal cortex. Okay, so the adrenal medulla bahagian oranye ni kan, so it is to produce the hormone epinephrine and bukan produce, secretes. Okay, secretes, it secretes only it secretes bukan it doesn't produce, but it secretes the epinephrine and norepinephrine. So because why, the adrenal medulla is the same as this posterior pituitary. It consists of axon from extended neurons. Okay, so the hormone will be secreted due to regulation by the nervous system. Okay, so fight or flight, instant reaction. Okay, so it has to be secreted instantly, norepinephrine and epinephrine, due to fight or flight reaction. Okay. And then the adrenal cortex bahagian luar ni kan, so it produces glucocorticoids, mineral corticoids, produce and secrete. Dia hasilkan, dia keluarkan, produce and secretes. Okay, so these are considered as steroid hormones. So you have to take note, steroid hormones are secreted by adrenal cortex and also the gonads. Okay, and then we have the so this one is to yang ni kita yang absorption, promote reabsorption of potassium, excretion of reabsorption of sodium, secretion of potassium. This is one we have looked at in chapter 3 kan, osmoregulation tu. Okay, so it is regulated by these two hormones. Okay, glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids, right? And then pancreas also, we have looked at the function of these two hormones in chapter 3, which function to regulate your blood glucose level. And then this one we have looked at during chapter 4. Okay, so the gonad secretes the sex hormones. So this gonad, in order for it to produce all these sex hormones, so it is regulated by the hormone secreted by the anterior pituitary, FSH and LH. So FSH, LH are considered as apa? Apa istilah tadi? Alamak. Apa saya guna istilah tadi? Tropic hormones. Okay, tropic hormones. Yeah, tropic hormones, right? TSH, tropic hormones. FSH, LH, they are tropic hormones. Okay, so just go through this table, understand how each gland produce or secrete only kan. So the type of hormones kan, and then the function. This is just a summary. So we are going to look at the detailed explanation of it. Okay, so let's look at the first gland. Endocrine gland is the hypothalamus, the first one. So this is the location of the hypothalamus. Okay, in your head area. So the hypothalamus, so this is the hypothalamus. Hanging from the hypothalamus, you have the pituitary gland. So pituitary gland, it has two region, anterior bahagian depan lah. Anterior ni awak punya mata, hidung, mulut kan. So it is anterior part. So the back you have the posterior. Okay, so the function of the hypothalamus receives input from the nervous system, the neurons throughout the body. Okay, so respond by sending out appropriate nervous or endocrine glands. Okay, so hypothalamus, it produce, it generate and transmit impulse, and at the same time it also produce and secrete and hormones. Okay, endocrine. Okay, so signals from the hypothalamus travel to the pituitary gland. Okay, so located at the base of the hypothalamus is the pituitary gland. Okay, so pituitary gland is located hanging from the hypothalamus, and then consists of two fused glands that form discrete posterior and anterior lobes. Okay. So and then okay, so this it shows you the difference between posterior and anterior. Posterior belakang, anterior depan. Okay, so posterior pituitary is a neuroendocrine glands. Okay, it consists of neuron extending from the hypothalamus. So that's why neuroendocrine. So in order for the posterior pituitary to secrete the hormones, it needs instruction or the transmission of impulse from the hypothalamus. Okay. So and then for the anterior pituitary, it is only an endocrine gland. Okay, so it doesn't involve the anterior part to be secreting hormone from the hypothalamus. All right, and then for the posterior consists of neurosecretory cells that develop from brain tissue. Yang macam saya tunjuk tadi yang ni kan. So this is the hypothalamus. So this is the posterior part. Jap. This is the posterior part. Okay, so yang warna kuning ni, so posterior. Orang ni facing sini. Okay, so this is the anterior. So this is the posterior, bahagian belakang. Okay, so posterior. So posterior, this is the cell body of the neuron. So it is in the hypothalamus. So this is the axon for the transmission of impulse, and then the axon extend into the posterior part. Okay, so as you can see, this is the cell body. Cell body ni dia ada apa? Dia ada cytoplasm, dia ada nucleus. So the nucleus instruct the cell to produce certain protein that becomes hormones. So the hormones will be traveling through the axon until it reaches the axon terminal and secretes at the posterior. Sini awak tulis secretes. So therefore posterior is to secrete the hormone produced or synthesized by the hypothalamus. Okay, so the hormone will be released into your bloodstream. So if this is, for example, oxytocin, it travels through your blood circulation until it reaches, for example, the mammary gland. Okay, so the mammary gland, it causes the ejection of milk. Okay, when the baby is nursing. So if the target organ is the uterus, it causes contraction of the uterus during childbirth. Okay, and then if the hormone is ADH, it goes to the kidney. It goes to the kidney. ADH is antidiuretic hormone to increase reabsorption of water. Okay. So that is to conserve to conserve water within your body. So that is the effects of these two hormones. So the pituitary gland, the posterior, is to secrete hormones synthesized from the hypothalamus. But okay, for the anterior, because it is made up of epithelial cells, so the epithelial cells synthesize and secrete. Highlight ya, dia anterior hasilkan hormon dia sendiri dan keluarkan hormon dia sendiri. So these two words are really crucial for you to take note. Synthesize and secrete its own hormone. Okay, synthesize and secrete hormone in response to hormone from the hypothalamus. For example, we have here releasing hormone, stimulate the anterior pituitary. Example of releasing hormone is GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormones. Okay, produced and secreted by the hypothalamus, it triggers the anterior pituitary to produce and secrete, synthesize and secrete FSH and LH. Macam tu, okay. So there's there you have the releasing, and also the anterior will respond to the inhibiting hormones, okay, which is secreted by the hypothalamus, right? So inhibited the anterior pituitary. For the posterior kan, so kita tahu kalau macam anterior it is made up of epithelial, kalau posterior it is made up of neurosecretory. It is to secrete hormone, okay, secretes hormone synthesized by the hypothalamus. Okay, we call this as neurohormones. Okay, neurohormones are synthesized by the hypothalamus, secretes into the posterior by the hypothalamic axon. Okay, so neurohormones are released in response to nerve impulse. Okay, nerve impulse. Oxytocin lah. Ada reaction yang berlaku macam contohnya childbirth kan, it triggers the the hypothalamus to produce and secretes by the posterior the oxytocin contohnya. Okay, stored neurohormones are released in response to nerve impulse. So far, do you have any questions? If you have question, please ask. Okay. So so we have looked at the diagram kan. So let's look at again. So this is the hypothalamus. Okay. So the hypothalamus consists of neurons. Okay. So neurosecretory cells of the hypothalamus produce releasing and inhibiting hormones. So this is by the green neurons here. Okay. So it produces hormones. Okay. And the hormone travels through the axon until it reaches the axon just reaches the anterior part. Okay, so releasing or inhibiting hormone, which is this green circle here, are secreted into capillaries, which is in the anterior part. Okay. So the hormone is transmitted through the blood capillaries until it reaches the endothelial cells. Sorry, the epithelial cells. Okay, the epithelial cells, which is function as endocrine cells, which is to produce and secrete hormones as a response from the hormone secreted by the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus secretes GnRH. Okay, GnRH travels through the blood capillaries until it reaches the endocrine cells of the anterior, instructs the endocrine cells of the anterior to produce and secrete FSH, LH, for example. Okay, so FSH and LH will be produced or synthesized and secretes by the anterior into the blood capillaries and travel along your blood circulation until it reaches the gonads, for example. Okay. So that is how it works. Okay, so perbezaan lah antara anterior, posterior. So posterior, these are the neurosecretory cells of the hypothalamus. So the cell body secretes oxytocin and ADH, travels through the axon, and then release into the blood capillaries of the posterior. So therefore, posterior will secretes the hormones and then travels through your blood circulation until it reaches the target organ. Oxytocin, mammary gland, uterus, ADH is the kidney. Okay, for osmoregulation, increased reabsorption of water. Okay, so posterior pituitary. Sama je explanation dia. Okay, posterior pituitary, this neuroendocrine, bahagian belakang kan. So it is made up of neurosecretory cells. So this is neuroendocrine. Okay, and neuroendocrine that secretes, highlight ni, posterior only secrete, it does not produce its own hormone. Okay, it does not produce its own hormone. So the hormone is secreted, is produced by the hypothalamus. Okay, secretes two peptide hormone, which is oxytocin, and also antidiuretic hormone ADH. So these hormones are enclosed within vessels. Why is it enclosed within vessels? Because it is peptide kan. So it is water soluble. Ini saya dah terangkan hari Rabu hari tu kan. It is protein. So this is the cell body of the neuron, which is in the hypothalamus. Okay, so you have the nucleus within the cell body. So the nucleus instruct the cell to produce the hormone. Okay, so yang ini awak kena ingat balik lah yang kita belajar semester lepas kan. From the nucleus, it extend into the rough endoplasmic reticulum where the ribosomes produce the protein and then package into vesicle and then goes to the Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus modify the protein and then repackage the protein into vesicles, and the vesicle travel the vesicle containing the hormone travels through the along the axon until it reaches the axon terminal. So these vesicles, it contains the hormone, it fuses with the plasma membrane of the axon terminal to release the hormone through exocytosis. Okay. So because it is peptide hormones, it does not require any transport protein to bind with it. So it just can travel freely because it is water soluble. Okay, it travels freely in your blood until it reaches the target cells. Okay, so at the target cell, because it is peptide hormone, it will bind to the receptor on the plasma membrane of the target cell. So ini bukan dalam ni, it binds at the surface. Okay. So and then so these hormone are enclosed within vesicles. Yang ni lah kat sini kan. So vesicles are transported down the axon into the posterior lobe of pituitary gland, kan, the posterior part. So vesicles are stored in the axon terminal. So this is axon terminal until the neuron is stimulated. Okay, so if the neuron is stimulated, it receives and transmit impulse. Kan, stimulated tu maksudnya receive and transmit impulse, so the axon content will diffuse into the surrounding capillaries through the process of exocytosis. Okay, so that is for the anterior. Secretes sahaja, dia secret je hormon dia, yang hasilkan adalah hypothalamus, remember that. Okay, and then for the anterior, okay, so for the anterior pituitary, it is made up of endothelial cells. Okay, we call it that function as endocrine cells lah. Endocrine produce and secretes. Okay. So so this is the endocrine cell. So this is the nucleus. It instructs the anterior the cells of the anterior pituitary to produce and synthesize and secretes its own hormone. So because it is tadi kita tengok table kan. So the hormone produced and synthesized and secreted by the anterior is mostly proteins kan. So samalah mechanism dia kan. So from the nucleus it extend into the rough endoplasmic reticulum that has ribosome that produce protein packaged into vesicles, and then from there it travels to the Golgi apparatus to be modified and then to produce hormones, okay, which is packaged into vesicles. So this vesicle will then fuse with the plasma membrane and then release through the process of exocytosis, and then it travels into your blood circulation. Okay, so there are protein hormone. It travels freely in your blood without binding to any transport protein and reaches the target cells. It binds to receptor on the plasma membrane of the target cells. Okay, so so hormones secreted by the hypothalamus control the release of all anterior pituitary. Kan? So anterior hypothalamus dia akan sama ada secrete releasing hormone ataupun inhibiting hormone kan. So it controls, okay, the synthesis and the secretion of hormone by the anterior. Okay, so hypothalamic releasing and inhibiting hormones are secreted near capillaries at the base of the hypothalamus. Ni lah kan, ni. Okay, at the base of hypothalamus. So these are blood capillaries of the anterior which receives the releasing or the inhibiting hormone from the hypothalamus. Okay. Okay, at the base. Tadilah gambar yang saya tunjuk tadi. Okay, so some anterior pituitary hormones are tropic hormones. So I've already explained to you on these terms. Okay, this is the definition. Tropic hormones are hormones stimulate another endocrine glands to secrete another hormone which affects specific target tissues. Okay, hypothalamus secrete releasing hormone causes the anterior pituitary to produce and secrete FSH, LH. FSH, LH are also considered as tropic hormone because it goes to the gonads to cause the gonad to produce sex hormones. Okay, macam itulah. So that is tropic hormones. It causes the hormone causes another endocrine gland to produce and secrete hormones. Okay. Okay, so this diagram, it shows you how these two pituitary gland differs. Okay, so this is the hypothalamus, kan? So the hypothalamus, hanging from there is the pituitary gland. Okay, so we have the anterior part, we have the posterior part. Okay, so posterior, as you can see, it is consisting of axon from the neuron initially in the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus produce the hormone will be packaged into vesicle, travel through the axon, which is the axon terminal, where it contains vesicles containing the hormone. So if the neuron is stimulated, it causes the posterior to release the hormone. Okay, to release the hormone or secretes the hormone into your blood circulation. For posterior, it only involves these two hormones. Senang je nak ingat. Ada dua je hormone. Okay, by the posterior, oxytocin and ADH. Oxytocin travels into your blood circulation. It reaches, for example, the mammary gland. Mammary gland is to cause ejection of milk. Okay, ejection of milk. Oxytocin, if it affects the uterus, it causes the uterus to contract during childbirth. And then for the ADH, the target organ is the kidney to cause reabsorption of water and causes the body to conserve water and produce concentrated urine. Ini awak kena tengok balik lah dalam chapter 3. Okay. So, but for the anterior pituitary, so anterior pituitary, as you can see, from the hypothalamus, you have the neurosecretory cells. So the neurosecretory cells either secrete releasing hormone or inhibiting hormone that will be released from the base of the hypothalamus. It releases the hormone into the blood capillaries that travels into the blood vessels of the anterior. So it affects releasing or inhibiting hormone. It causes the cells of the anterior to respond. Okay, either it causes production of another hormone, or it inhibits the production of another hormone by the anterior. Okay. So it is made up of epithelial cells, which function as endocrine cells. Okay, so these are all the different types of hormone produced by the anterior. Anterior banyak lagi lah. Okay, so let's look at the hormone produced by the anterior that has tropic function. Okay, tropic function. So tropic function, anterior produces TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay, so thyroid stimulating hormone, nama pun thyroid. So namanya, maksudnya hormon tu akan affects thyroid gland at your neck region here. Okay. So thyroid stimulating hormone causes thyroid gland to produce another hormone, thyroxine. Apa nama hormon dia lagi? Sekejap. Atas. Yeah, so thyroid gland such as inilah thyroxine, triiodothyronine, T4, T3, which regulate your body metabolism. Okay. Okay, so and then there's the ACTH. ACTH is adrenocorticotropic hormone. Tropic hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone. Okay. Okay, so it triggers the cortex of the medulla. Okay, the adrenal cortex. That kan cortex bahagian yang luar of adrenal gland. So adrenocorticotropic cortisol punya hormon kan. Mineral corticoids dengan lagi satu ini. Okay, corticoids is regulated by ACTH, produced by the anterior kan, adrenocorticotropic hormones, which causes the adrenal cortex to release these two hormones. C ni corticoids, glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. Okay. And then there's the FSH and LH kan. So it triggers the gonads. Okay, so for the gonads to secrete sex hormone estrogen and also progesterone by the ovary, testosterone by the testes. Okay, so these are tropic hormones. Okay, but the anterior also produces non-tropic, which is prolactin and MSH. Anterior produces and secrete prolactin. So the target organ is the mammary gland. Okay, the function of prolactin is to produce the milk by the mammary gland. Prolactin produce milk. Oxytocin is to release the milk, ejection of the milk. Okay. And then we have the MSH. MSH is melanocyte stimulating hormone. Okay, melanocyte stimulating hormone. It causes the synthesis of your skin pigment lah, melanocyte. Okay, so melanocyte is melanin. Okay, it triggers melanocyte cells that produce melanin, your skin pigment. And then you have the GH, growth hormones. Okay, growth hormones. So growth hormones, it triggers or it reaches the target organ, which is the liver, the bones, other tissue to grow. Okay, so so growth hormone have tropic or non-tropic effects. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the thyroid glands. Okay, so thyroid gland is here. Okay, so it is in the lower part of the neck. Okay, in front of the trachea. So ini yang saya mention tadi tu. If you were to dissect mouse, okay, at the neck area, so open up the skin layer, the muscles, kan? So then you will find the thyroid, and then below the thyroid you have the trachea. Below the trachea you have the esophagus. Okay. So for the thyroid, it consists of two lobes. Okay, so two lobes, and then the function of the thyroid gland is to produce these two hormones, dua je hormone dia, which is T4 and also T3. Okay, so T3, T4, which is the T4 is thyroxine, T3 is triiodothyronine, tiga. Okay, triiodothyronine. So thyroid hormones regulate bioenergetics lah, metabolisms. Okay, helps maintain blood glucose pressure. Normal blood pressure. Okay, normal blood pressure, heart rate, and also muscle tone. Okay, and then essential for growth and development. So these are the function of the hormones secreted by the thyroid. Okay, so this is how the thyroid hormone is regulated. Okay. So, okay, within your body, what is the stimulus? Mesti ada yang kita tengok hari tu kan, chapter 3 kan, certain internal factor, chemical or physical factors decrease or increase, in fact, the increase in from the set point. Okay, so set point ada certain setiap chemical and physical factor ni ada certain set point dia. Okay, so for example, your body is going to regulate, okay, the secretion of the thyroid hormones. Okay, so the stimulus is that the thyroid hormone in your blood drops. Okay, drop from the normal set point. Okay, so that is detected by the sensory neurons. Okay, so the sensory neuron respond by sending impulse to the neurosecretory cells of the hypothalamus. Okay, so the hypothalamus receive that change. Okay, that stimulus. Okay, so the hypothalamus secrete TRH. Okay, TRH into the blood. TRH is thyrotropin releasing hormone. Ini memang kena ingat. Okay, thyrotropin. So hypothalamus produce the hormone TRH, okay, thyrotropin releasing hormone. It secretes the hormone into the blood, and then travels into your blood circulation. Okay, your blood circulation until it reaches the anterior pituitary. Okay, so anterior pituitary respond from the hormone of the hypothalamus, which is TRH, and causes the anterior pituitary to release TSH. TRH is tropin hormone, causes the anterior to also release tropin hormone. In this time is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay, so thyrotropin releasing hormone causes anterior to release thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay, so thyroid stimulating hormone dia pergi ke mana? Ke neck region lah, ke thyroid gland. Okay, so kat sini kan, so So from the anterior, it goes into your blood circulation, which is the thyroid gland. Okay, so thyroid gland, TSH causes the thyroid gland to secrete T3 and also T4. Okay, thyroid gland secrete T3 and T4, which is triiodothyronine and also thyroxine. So it goes in your blood circulation to give all these sort of effects. Okay, so thyroid hormone levels increase back to the normal set point. Okay, to yang ni lah dia punya function dia kan. So that is the function of these thyroid hormones. Okay, for bioenergetics. Okay, so your thyroid hormone back to the normal set point, and then it triggers negative feedback. Tak perlulah nak increasekan balik semula, kan, sebab dah balik semula ke normal set point. Okay, thyroid hormone blocks TRH release and TSH release, preventing overproduction of the thyroid hormone. So it causes negative feedback to the hypothalamus, stop for a while for the secretion of TRH and also TSH by the thyroid by the anterior pituitary. Okay, so apart from the thyroid gland produce and secrete T3 and T4 for bioenergetics. So tadi heart rate, blood pressure and all. Okay. So the thyroid hormone also involved in regulation of calcium level. Okay, regulation of calcium level. So the thyroid gland secretes calcitonin, okay, which is a peptide hormone, which is to regulate calcium level in the blood and also interstitial fluid. Regulates, you have to take note how does the hormone calcitonin regulate calcium level. When the calcium level increase, okay, when there is a lot of calcium in your blood, then only calcitonin will be released. Okay, so the calcium level in your blood increase above set point, normal set point, then only the calcitonin will be secreted. Okay, calcitonin is released to stimulate deposition of calcium into bones and reduce calcium ion uptake by the kidney. Sebab kita punya, let's say lah, you just drink a lot of milk. Okay, you drink a lot of milk, you at that point you eat a lot of cheesecake, for example, you have your blood calcium level increase. Okay, so when your blood calcium level increase, it causes the calcium level to be deposited into your bones. Okay, so that's why for children they are encouraged to drink a lot of milk. Okay, a lot of milk, so that when as we know, milk, it has a high calcium composition, calcium level. Okay, so that calcium causes your blood calcium level to increase, calcitonin to be secreted, and causes the calcium to be deposited into your bones, causing the child to be tall. Macam tu lah. But anyhow, when you are older also, kan, kita dah takkan tinggi dah. Contohnya bila dah minum susu lah berapa tan pun, memang tu lah tinggi tu. But your body still need calcium, okay, for muscle contraction, for transmission of impulse. Nanti kita tengok dalam apa, in the next part, calcium also is required during impulse transmission. Okay, so memang kena ambil calcium, especially yang perempuan kan, bila kita period semua. Kat sini nampak kan? So this is axon terminal, and then the calcium is also involved in the transmission of impulse from one neuron to another neuron. Okay, so calcium is really important for your body. Okay, walaupun kita dah takkan tinggi dah macam tu, tapi we also need calcium. Okay. Okay, so in human, calcitonin is needed during childhood for extensive bone growth. Okay, So, countering the function of calcitonin by the thyroid gland, we have the parathyroid hormone by the parathyroid glands. Kalau kita tengok ke gambar ni, kan? Gambar ni thyroid gland. So this is thyroid gland. Okay. So this is thyroid gland. On the surface of the thyroid gland, there will be the parathyroid gland. Ada 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So the function of the parathyroid gland is to secrete the hormone parathyroid hormone (PTH). Okay. So parathyroid gland is a set of 4 small structures embedded in the connective tissue of thyroid gland. If we have example gambar ni. So this is thyroid gland. So on the thyroid gland, there will be the parathyroid gland. Okay, function to release PTH, parathyroid hormones. Okay, so parathyroid hormone dia counter ataupun dia antagonis lah dengan hormon calcitonin. Okay, so PTH is also to regulate blood calcium level, but when blood calcium level fall below set point. Okay, so awak tak suka susu, awak tak nak minum susu, awak tak nak ada anything to do with dairy product. Tak nak makan susu pun. Tak nak. So your calcium level will drop. Okay, so when calcium level drops, it causes PTH to be released from the parathyroid gland. Okay, so when blood calcium level falls below set point, PTH is released. So PTH causes mineralized matrix of bone to break down. Okay, so releasing calcium into bone. So that's why lama-lama bila macam contohnya kita dah tua ke apa ataupun kan orang tua dia senang bila dia jatuh bone dia breaks kan. So this due to the low level of calcium. Okay, so especially for women kan, when we have periods, so we have to replace all that darah semua, so we also have to take a lot of calcium macam itulah. Okay, so PTH causes mineralized matrix of bone to break down, releasing calcium into blood. Okay, into blood. And then PTH directly stimulate the reabsorption of calcium through the renal tubules and in the intestine. So this is how this is the two mechanisms, okay, of how PTH works. Satu, dia ambil calcium daripada tulang kan, so causes mineralized matrix of bone to break down, releasing calcium into your blood. Calcium level tadi low, dia akan increasekan balik, satu cara. And then the next method is that PTH stimulate reabsorption of calcium through the renal tubules and in the intestine. Kita makan kan, so some of the food that you eat, bukan kalsium ni bukan sumber dia susu, dairy product je, ada sumber lain juga. Okay, daripada makanan yang you all makan. So calcium from the food that you eat will be reabsorbed. Okay, will be absorbed. Okay, will be absorbed by the kidney and also by from the intestine through resorption of nutrients from the food that you eat. Okay, so this is how the body regulates calcium level. Homeostasis lah kan, regulate internal factor, physical or chemical factor at the normal set point. That is homeostasis lah. So in this case, it's the calcium level. So should be in your blood 10 milligram of calcium per 100 ml of blood. Okay, if this level deviate from the normal set point, for example, if calcium level increase, okay, rising of calcium level, if this lead to imbalance, it causes the thyroid gland to secrete calcitonin. Okay, so calcitonin will deposit the excess calcium to your bones. Okay, so kalau dia kanak-kanak, dia akan jadi tinggi lah kan. So and then also reduce calcium uptake by the kidney. Okay, so release or excreted from the body. And then calcium level falls again to the normal set point. If calcium level falls below set point, kan, awak tak makan susu, tak minum, there's no ambil makanan yang kurang calcium level, so So it triggers the thyroid gland to secrete parathyroid hormones. So dua cara macam mana dia works. PTH will cause breakdown of bones to calcium from bones to release into your blood, and then rise blood calcium level back to the normal set point, and then another one, increase absorption of calcium from the kidney, and also increase absorption of calcium from the intestine. Okay, so this increase blood calcium level at the normal set point. Bila soalan dia tanya contoh how calcium level is regulated when it increases, so kena cerita pasal calcitonin. Kalau tanya how calcium level is regulated when calcium level falls below set point, you have to answer by the function of PTH. Okay. So tengoklah soalan tu dia tanya macam mana kan. So you cannot simply cakap okay. Kalau soalan tanya kan, what is the function of the hormone calcitonin? Dua markah lah dia bagi. The function of hormone calcitonin is to regulate calcium level. Titik. Tak dapat, you may not receive any marks. Kenalah cerita macam mana kan. So when blood calcium level increase, it causes calcium level to be deposited into the bones. You have to explain. Okay. Okay, so next is the next gland, which is adrenal gland. Kita pause sekejap. Okay, kita rehat sekejap. Okay, next part is the adrenal gland. Okay, next gland is the adrenal gland. So adrenal gland is located above the kidney. So kidney kita ada dua, so maksudnya kiri kanan pun ada adrenal gland. So we have a pair, okay, of adrenal gland. Okay. So the paired adrenal glands are small, yellow masses of tissue that lies in contact with the upper end of the kidney. If you were to observe during your mouth sensation, above the kidney will be a yellow mass of tissues. So do not mistaken that with fats. So that is adrenal gland. Okay. Because it is yellow in color, right? So and then each gland consists of a central portion. We call it as the adrenal medulla, bahagian tengah, okay? And the outer region is the adrenal cortex, right? So like pituitary gland, each adrenal gland is fused, like pituitary gland, each adrenal gland is fused with endocrine, which is the endocrine is adrenal cortex, okay, and neuroendocrine gland, which is adrenal medulla. Maksudnya kat sini adrenal gland ni dia macam pituitary gland juga. pituitary gland dia ada anterior posterior kan. So kalau posterior tu tadi dia adalah neurosecretory cells, okay. Kalau anterior tadi dia adalah endocrine cells. Sama juga macam adrenal gland. Bahagian adrenal medulla bahagian tengah ni dia adalah neuroendocrine. Maksudnya adrenal medulla ni dia akan secrete hormone from the neuron extending jauh dalam badan awak. Okay. So it is to secrete the hormone from neuron. Okay, from neuron. So adrenal medulla is made up of neuron cells. Okay. And then from the adrenal cortex, dia macam anterior pituitary lah. It is made up of endocrine cells, produce and secretes its own hormone. Okay, which is the cortex. Dia akan secrete yang corticoids punya hormone, glucocorticoids and also mineralocorticoids, which are steroid hormones. Tapi kalau adrenal medulla, untuk contohnya fight or flight, kan, so secrete the hormone instantly by the neurons, by the nervous system. That is epinephrine and norepinephrine. Okay. So adrenal medulla first. Okay, so nampak dia guna perkataan kat sini. This secretes sahaja. Function of the medulla, it does not produce the hormone, but it is to secrete the hormones. Okay, secrete hormone epinephrine, which also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine known as noradrenaline. Okay, so both acts as hormone and neurotransmitter. So both are hormones, both are also neurotransmitter. So transmitter you dah belajar kan. So you have the neurons, the cell body, and then extend into the axon. You have the axon terminal. So the function of the neuron is to generate and transmit impulse. Once the impulse is at the axon terminal, impulse ni apa sebenarnya? Impulse ni adalah pergerakan ion keluar masuk sel. Ya, ion. Dua ion yang terlibat adalah sodium ion and also potassium ion. Bila dua ion ni keluar masuk axon tu, okay, it causes membrane potential to change. Dulu saya pernah cerita kat you all, semua sel, okay, semua sel dia mesti dalam keadaan negatif kat dalam, positif kat luar. Okay. Tapi kalau untuk neuron cell, this is the axon kan. Axon of the neuron. Daripada dalam negatif ni, untuk for the neuron to be able to generate and transmit impulse ni adalah disebabkan oleh perubahan potential, membrane potential. Okay, so when a certain region of axon is generating impulse, okay, so it needs to change from the negative charge to become positive. Apa yang menyebabkan dalam tu jadi positif? Disebabkan pergerakan ion. So for example, when the impulse is generated along the axon, sodium will enter, causing the membrane to change from negative to become positive. Sampai dia reach axon terminal. Okay. At the axon terminal, there will be vesicles containing the neurotransmitter, either adrenaline or noradrenaline, like epinephrine for example. So this neurotransmitter at the axon terminal will be released into synapse. Okay, into synapse, chemical synapse. So the function of this neurotransmitter, which release into the chemical synapse, it binds to receptor on the dendrite of next neuron. Okay, so dendrite tu nanti tak apalah, nanti kita akan belajar selepas ni. Basically for the neurotransmitter, it causes one neuron to be able to transmit impulse to the next neuron. That is neurotransmitter. Okay. So and then as hormones, both epinephrine and norepinephrine can increase the rate of glycogen breakdown in the liver and skeletal muscle and promote release of glucose by liver cells and also fatty acid from fat cells. So they can also affect circulatory and respiratory system by increasing heart rate and dilate the small air passages in the lung. This action rise the rate of oxygen delivery for body cells. As you can see, these are the effects of epinephrine and norepinephrine for fight or flight reactions. Okay, so your body needs instant energy supply, instant fuel. Okay, so dalam keadaan terkejut, tiba-tiba jalan-jalan kat koridor nampak hantu contohnya, for example. Okay. So you are in a state of shock, kan? So you need to run as fast as possible you need to respond. Mata awak terjegil kat situ, heart rate, okay, heart rate increase, kita terkejut, you need to breathe even more kan. Okay, so and then this is to increase your body activity, kan. So you need instant supply of oxygen, of glucose, glycogen breakdown, okay, to supply or increase glucose level. Also affects heart rate increase, okay, you tend to breathe even more, right? So that is for the adrenal medulla. So adrenal medulla, it is the middle region of adrenal gland. It secretes the hormone from the neuroendocrine cells. Okay, but for the outer part is the adrenal cortex. Okay, adrenal cortex. So adrenal cortex become active under stressful conditions such as low blood glucose level, low blood volume, and low blood pressure. Okay, so these are stressful condition for your body. For example, ini bukan macam contohnya blood glucose level awak puasa seharian. Ini macam contohnya orang yang starving kan, dalam perang contohnya, you are in a state of ini saya contohnya depressed kan. So you are not eating for a long you are not taking enough source of food that provides you with energy, macam itulah. Okay. Your blood glucose level drops. Bukan yang ini, kalau kita puasa hari tu blood glucose level drops is regulated by insulin kan, glucagon, right? Itu kejap-kejap. Ini yang lama punya stage. Okay, blood low blood volume, low blood pressure kan. So stressful conditions. Tadi yang epinephrine tadi stressful juga, tapi datang kejap pada masa tu. Yang ini lama. Okay, kesan yang jangka panjang. So the stimulus causes hypothalamus to secrete releasing hormone that stimulate anterior pituitary to release ACTH kan. So anterior pituitary, okay, releases the adrenocorticotropic hormone, cortisol, okay, cortisol, which is glucocorticoids, and then aldosterone, which is mineralocorticoids, ACTH by the anterior. It goes to the adrenal cortex, causes these two hormones to be released. Okay. So ACTH reaches the adrenal cortex, bahagian luar. So bahagian luar adrenal gland tu it is made up of epithelial cells, okay, which is endocrine cells. So via bloodstream and stimulating it to synthesize and release corticosteroid hormones. Okay, so the two hormones are glucocorticoids, cortisol, which promotes glucose synthesis from non-carbohydrate source such as protein. So yang saya cerita tadi tu kan, orang yang macam contohnya dalam perang, dia kebuluh lama-lama, dia jadi kurus, jadi very skinny, right? So sebab apa? Sebab dia dah tak ada sumber glycogen dah untuk breakdown untuk glucose, so dia pergi kepada muscle cell, which is proteins kan. So and then also fats tadi kan cerita tadi tak ada kat sini. Sekejap, ada tadi sekejap. Saya pun tak ingat. Okay, tapi tak apa. Okay sekejap. Ni. Okay. Protein and fats broken down converted into glucose leading to increased blood glucose level. Ni macam contohnya tadi lah kan, orang yang starving kan, orang yang dalam keadaan depressed, tak makan-makan, jadi kurus, whatever kan. So this is due to the effects of hormone glucocorticoids, which breaks down protein and also fats into and convert into glucose. Okay, breaks down and convert, kan, break down jadi glucose, terus break down and then convert into glucose to increase glucose level as source of energy. Okay. So and then we have mineral corticoids such as this aldosterone for regulation of blood body fluid. Okay, so ion and water homeostasis of the blood. Yang ini kena tengok balik chapter 3 yang RAS tu, RAAS tu. Okay, aldosterone. So when blood volume and blood pressure falls below set point, so aldosterone will be secreted to increase sodium level absorption and water absorption. So ini RAS dalam chapter 3, you look back. Okay, tengok balik. Okay, so this is regulated by mineralocorticoids. Okay, so basically, okay, so we are looking at this figure, kan? It is to summarize the function of the adrenal glands. So adrenal gland, you have to know it has two regions, which is medulla and also the cortex. So both of the hormones secreted by the medulla gland is under stress condition. Kan, awak terkejut nampak hantu, stress lah. Tak ada kita suka nampak hantu kan, atau pula whatever, right? Stress, you are stressed. Baik, tengoklah keadaan stress yang terkejut macam tu sekejap ataupun stress yang berpanjangan. Macam itulah, okay, stress condition. So stress response and the adrenal medulla first kita tengok. So the stimulus of physical threats, exercise or cold exposure causes the hypothalamus to activate the adrenal medulla via the nerve impulse. So as you can see, so initially the stress is received from by your brain, stress condition. So it sends impulse through your neuron that has long axon that extend into the spinal cord. And then from the spinal cord, you have another neuron extend into the adrenal medulla. Okay, so this involves the transmission of impulse to transmit instruction ataupun information that your body is under stress condition at that point of time. Okay, you are in a state of this condition. Okay, physical threat, for example, and then that impulse will trigger the adrenal medulla to secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine. Okay, secretes only, it doesn't produce. And then these two hormones, which also function as neurotransmitter, will be transmitted into your blood circulation to cause all these effects. Okay, so it causes the liver cell and also the muscle cell to break down glycogen into glucose, increase blood glucose level, increase also blood pressure, and then increase breathing rates, increase metabolic rates, change in blood flow patterns leading to increased alertness and decreased digestive, excretory, reproductive and system activity. So that's why kita tak boleh lah macam contohnya suka-suka nak buat pranks kat orang. Kita tak tahu dia punya heart condition macam mana kan. Sekarang ni banyak orang buat prank-prank, nak buat video whatever. We don't know the heart condition of that person. Okay, so for example, you intentionally you are nak bergurau contohnya kan. So buat satu prank nak terkejutkan dia. Macam tu, okay. So it causes your heart rate to pump faster, blood pressure increase. So it may lead to, for example, heart or even burst of blood vessels, kan. So that's why. So it is not bukan perangai yang baik lah macam tu kan, untuk buat prank yang terkejut ke orang ni. So it leads to this kind of reactions. Okay. Bolehlah bergurau tapi bukan tahap melampau macam tu lah kan. Alright. So saya pernah roommate saya, roommate ni masa kerja masa saya duduk kat rumah sewa, dia ni suka bergurau lah. Dia masuk kat bilik pakai telekung, tutup lampu macam tu kan. Dia akan trigger kita punya keadaan terkejut tu lah. Okay. So that is one of the prank. Tapi okay, kawan-kawan kan macam, tapi tak ada tahap yang sangat serius macam tu lah. We don't know the state of health of that certain person, right? So and then okay, so this is this is for the mechanism of the hormone secreted by the adrenal cortex. Okay, so the adrenal cortex it is to produce and secrete its own hormones. Okay, so stimulate stimulus of low blood glucose, sugar, decreased blood volume, pressure, or shock causes the hypothalamus to activate the adrenal cortex via the hormonal signal. So it causes the releasing hormone from the hypothalamus secrete ACTH, travels to your blood, reaches the adrenal cortex. Okay, adrenocorticotropic hormones ni daripada anterior causes the adrenal gland, the cortex part to secrete these two hormone, mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids. So mineralocorticoids ni mineral ions. Okay. So it causes sodium ion to be reabsorbed by the kidney, and also water will be reabsorbed, which is aldosterone, and increase. Kalau sodium increase blood pressure. Water increase resorption, increase blood volume. Okay. So and then effects of glucocorticoids, yang ni lah yang due to low blood sugar level kan, so it causes protein and fats to be broken down, converted into glucose, leading to increased blood glucose level and also partial suppression of the immune system. So that's why kita tak boleh depress berpanjangan, macam tu kan. Tak boleh depress berpanjangan, nanti dia akan affects your body health. Okay, your body health, your state, macam tu lah kan. So it suppress your immune system, senang sakit semua, right? So that's why kita tak boleh lah nak dalam keadaan stress yang melampau-lampau, macam tu. We have to recover. Kita kalau dalam keadaan stress, kita turn kepada siapa? Turn kepada kita, Allah lah, Tuhan kan, to make ourselves more calm, macam tu kan. So jangan berkurung sorang-sorang, macam tu, right? So jangan galakkan keadaan depres yang berpanjangan. So senang syaitan nak masuk, senang nak hasut, macam tu lah, right? So don't let your body to be under extensive stress, macam tu. Macam saya lah baru lepas keguguran. Kalau kita nak layankan perasaan kan, kita akan stres yang berpanjangan. So boleh kita depress, boleh kita sedih, tapi tak boleh yang berpanjangan, sebab kita punya family nak look after kan. Diri kita sendiri, kita we have to make sure that we are in a state of good health, macam tu. Okay. Okay, so next part. Okay. Okay, so next is gonad. Okay, so gonad. So steroid sex hormone include estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So these are sex hormone which are steroids. Okay, so produced by the gonad in response to signal from the hypothalamus and also pituitary gland. So hypothalamus produce and secrete GnRH. Okay, gonadotropin, gonad, ovary and also testis. Gonadotropin releasing hormone, tapi dia tak pergi straight kepada gonad, dia pergi kepada pituitary gland lah, the anterior. Tulis sini kat your punya note, anterior pituitary. Okay, anterior pituitary produce and secrete FSH and LH. So it triggers the gonad for female, which is ovary, to mature follicle every month to cause ovulation, for example. Okay, kalau male to secrete testosterone to aid in the spermatogenesis mechanism or the production of sperm. Okay. So estrogen, progesterone stimulate development of female characteristics and maintain female reproductive system. Okay, so that is the hormone by the gonads. This is by the ovary. Okay, ovary. So ovary secrete estrogen, progesterone. It affects, for example, the uterine lining, can causing the uterus to thicken, to ready for implantation of fertilized eggs and also female their characteristics. Testosterone trigger development of male characteristics including spermatogenesis. Okay. So next one is pineal gland. So pineal is a small mass of tissue near the center of the mammalian brain. So this is pineal gland. Okay. So the function is to produce melatonin, which is hormone. The function of this hormone is to regulate or influence biological rhythm and the onset of sexual maturity, And also melatonin also affects skin pigmentation in many vertebrates. Melanin, it affects melanocytes. Melanocytes is the cells that produces your skin pigments. Okay, melanin. Kalau yang ini, yang atas ni, biological rhythm. Contohnya, kalau macam contohnya kita kat Malaysia, you all pergi naik kapal terbang, pergi dekat UK. Time ada perbezaan masa kan. Kalau kita siang, orang kat sana still malam. Contohnya kan. Okay, kalau kita malam, orang kat sana still siang. Macam itulah kan. So bila kita travel daripada kita sampai sana waktu siang dekat UK, kita akan jadi ngantuk. Sebab apa? Sepatutnya kat Malaysia kita tidur. Macam tu kan. So that is biological rhythm. Kan? So your body need to adjust to that condition. Alright. So and the onset of sexual maturity. Alright. Okay, so that is for the hormone parts. Okay, so all these endocrine glands, you have to know the hormone, you have to know the functions. So far, do you have any question to what we have covered for this lecture?
No, madam.
Tak ada. Faham Okay, so we have a few more minutes. Saya nak habiskan pukul 10 boleh tak? Kita nak tengok apa nama awal-awal neuron ni. Tak ada kelas kan?
Tak ada.
Ada. Alright. So we are going to look at the next part, which is the neuron part. Okay, hormone dah cover, so we are going to look at on the neuron parts. Okay, so neurons. So this is another way of how cell communicates. Tadi hormones, cell communicates from one cell to another cell. They communicate through chemical signaling, chemical molecule. But for neuron, it causes cells of your body to also to communicate, cell communication, but through the transmission of electrical impulse. Okay, electrical neuron, hormone is chemical. Okay, so okay, so structural units of the nervous system also called as the nerve cells. Okay, neurons lah, right? So large, highly specialized cells that conduct nerve impulses from one part of the body to another. Alright, kita ada berapa jenis neuron? Kita ada sensory neuron to detect stimulus changes, and then kita ada interneurons, which is the brain, in the brain for interpretation of what is happening to carry out corrective mechanism. So that instruction from the interneuron in the brain will send to the motor neuron for the response. Okay, so for example, the motor neuron can be extended into your muscle cell, causing your muscle to contract, or it can send impulse to the endocrine gland to cause the endocrine gland to produce and secrete hormones. So that is the different types of neurons. Okay, sensory, interneurons, and motor neuron. Okay. So let's look at the special characteristics of neurons. Okay, so extreme longevity. Okay, longevity, so function optimally for lifetime with good nutrition. So we have to make sure that we take good nutritious food. So one of the benefit is that we can maintain good condition of our neurons. Okay, and then and then next is amyloidotic, which is do not have ability to divide. Okay, bila neuron ni dah destroyed, dia destroyed. Okay, dia tak boleh dihasilkan yang baru. Dia tak akan undergo mitosis, meiosis. Okay, so cannot be replaced if destroyed. So there are some region in the brain contain stem cell that can produce neuron throughout lifetime. Ada yang but it is in the brain. Kalau tempat lain it is destroyed. Okay. So and then high metabolic rates require continuous continuous and abundant supply of oxygen and glucose. So that's why our brain, especially because it is made up of neurons, we cannot deprive it of oxygen especially. Okay, so yang lemas ke kan, so that low supply of oxygen will affect the brain function. Okay. Okay, so this is the structure of neurons. Okay, so this is the whole neuron. So I'm sure that you already know the structure of the neuron. So and then okay, so this is the cell body. Okay, so the cell body of the neuron. So extending from the cell body, it is the dendrites. Okay, so the dendrites basically function. Orang nampak dia bercabang-cabang tu. It is function to receive impulse coming from the previous neurons. The previous neuron, we can call it as presynaptic neuron. Okay, presynaptic neuron is transmitting the impulse. So the impulse will be transmitted to the postsynaptic neuron. Postsynaptic neuron is that is receiving the impulse. Okay. So there is dendrites. Okay, so basically the signal is the transmission of impulse. It is due to apa saya cakap tadi, the movement of ions in and out of the neurons basically. Okay, so dia melibatkan apa, kalau kat sini it is the plasma membrane of the cell, right? So on the plasma membrane there will be ion channel. So ion channel tu yang akan buka tutup that allows ion to move in and out of the cell. So kita ada, nanti kita akan tengok ada leak ion channel. Leak tu maksudnya it is always open. Okay, leak ion channel, and we have also the voltage gated ion channel, and at the dendrite kita ada ligand gated channel. Okay, ligand gated channel, it opens and close as the result of the binding of neurotransmitter. Okay, neurotransmitter tadi dia release kat synaptic cleft kat sini kan, chemical synapse, synaptic cleft. So neurotransmitter release and then bind to ligand gated channel, causes the channel to open. Bila buka, baru ion boleh masuk. Ion tu akan travel along the dendrite, reaches the cell body, causes membrane potential to also change, but especially at the axon region here. So this is where the full action potential will be generated and transmitted. Okay, kat sini. The axon is where the impulse will be generated. So the impulse, in order to generate the impulse, it needs voltage gated channel along here. Okay. So cell body. Okay, so cell body, it has the nucleus, it has all the organelles. Okay, it has the endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi body, the mitochondria. As you can see, yang garis-garis ni the cytoskeletons. Okay, so the function of cell body, for example, it is to produce neurotransmitter. Okay, so to generate energy because it has mitochondria. Alright, so the neurotransmitter that is produced in the cell body will be packaged into vesicles and then travel along the axon until it reaches the axon terminal, synaptic terminal, to be released into synaptic cleft. And if you look at this diagram also, so this is the axon region, right? Okay, so the axon region yang panjang ni, so it is covered with myelin sheath. Okay, these are myelin sheath. So the myelin sheath are made up of Schwann cells. Okay, Schwann cells. So dia akan balut. Tapi dekat each of that region there will be gaps. Okay, gap. So that gap we call it as nodes of Ranvier. Okay, nodes of Ranvier. So at the nodes of Ranvier ni yang adalah kawasan yang tak di wrap oleh myelin sheath tu. So it is exposed, and then it has here in this region myelin sheath is where voltage gated channel are located. Tulis kat awak punya nota, voltage gated channel, ion channel is located here. So this is where sodium voltage gated channel ions are located, potassium voltage gated channel are located. So this is where sodium ion diffuse in, potassium ion diffuses out, causes membrane potential to change from initially kan, kalau ini axon. Okay, so if the neuron is not transmitting any impulse, not generating any impulse, dia dalam keadaan negatif. Okay, so at the node of Ranvier there will be the voltage gated channel. Okay, so let's say lah this is the voltage gated channel. Dia adalah transport protein lah, okay, embedded in the plasma membrane. So when the axon is going to generate impulse, the voltage gated channel akan buka. Dia akan buka. Okay. It causes sodium ion to diffuse into the axon, changing the membrane potential from negative to positive. Bila betulkan jadi positif, baru action potential tu boleh terhasil. Action potential tu disebabkan dalam membrane axon bertukar jadi daripada negatif jadi positif sebab sodium ion masuk. Sodium ion is positively charged. Okay. Na plus. Okay. So as you can see, signal pathway is the direction of which the impulse is transmitted from dendrites and then axon nanti reaches the axon terminal. Tapi impulse action potential hanya ada pada axon, action potential. Tapi dekat along dendrites cell body, kita tak panggil dia action potential, kita panggil dia sebagai graded potential. Okay, graded potential. Berlaku juga perubahan charge tu tapi tak setinggi dekat axon. Okay. Alright. Okay, so cell body. Okay, so cell body. Cell body is the largest portion of the neuron is the largest portion of the neuron. Okay, so cell body contains the nucleus surrounded by the cytoplasm, contains organelles such as ribosomes, rough endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, and also microtubules, the cytoskeleton lah. So neurofibrils play important roles in transporting substances within the neurons. Okay. So what makes the axon to maintain its structure panjang tu? Because it has cytoskeleton, microtubules here extending throughout the axon. Okay. So we have here two regions of the neuron. We call it as processes, neuron processes. There are two types of neuron processes. Dia bukan proses mechanism dia nama tempat dalam neuron tu. Okay, neuron processes, one is the dendrites, okay, and then the other one is axon. Okay, so dendrites are this one, the structure that branch throughout the cell body here. So typically short and highly branched, so numerous, extend from the cell body, function in receiving stimuli and sending signal which is graded potential to the cell body. Okay, so sebelum ni kita ada neuron yang sebelum neuron ni kan. Okay, this is our imagine kat sini ada the previous neuron. We call it as presynaptic neuron. So this neuron is transmitting impulse to this neuron here, postsynaptic neuron. So the transmission of impulse is basically the movement of ions. It involves movement of ions from one neuron to another neurons. Okay. So bila ion masuk, dia menyebabkan membrane potential berubah daripada negatif jadi positif. Tapi perubahan charge tu dia tak berapa tinggi, tak berapa signifikan. Dia tak akan hasilkan a full action potential. So kat sini dia dekat dendrites, dekat cell body, dia hanya akan hasilkan graded potential. Okay, so can be found at one end of the cell body. So this is the dendrite, and then for the axon, so it is the initial region of the axon arises from axon helix. Ini axon helix ni. Daripada cell body dia akan jadi start to narrow kat sini. Ini kita panggil dia sebagai axon helix. Okay, and narrows forming a slender process that is uniform in diameter along its length. So daripada axon helix yang extend daripada cell body ni, dia akan start to narrow jadi axon. Okay, so each neuron has a single axon leaving the cell body, so conducts nerve impulses away from the cell body to another neuron, a muscle, or a gland cell. So for example, this is a neuron that is generating and transmitting impulse. Dekat hujung ni, dan dekat hujung ni dia akan connect dengan another cell. So this another cell can be another neuron, ataupun a muscle cell. Kalau neuron ni dia connect dengan muscle cell, dia akan cause muscle cell to contract. Okay, kalau neuron ni dia connect dengan another neuron, dia akan cause transmission of impulse to the next neuron to the next neuron. And then kalau neuron ni dia connect dengan glands such as endocrine gland, it can cause the endocrine gland to secrete hormones, macam tu kan. So that is the axon part. Okay. So next is the myelin sheath. Okay, so in invertebrates, the axon of many neurons are surrounded by myelin sheath that is made up of Schwann cells. Make sure you know how to spell myelin sheath. Sheath ya, bukan sheet. S-H-E-E-T, kan? So bukan sheath, bukan kepingan, it is sheath. So make sure that you spell the term correctly. Okay, so that is made up of Schwann, ada double N cells. So gap between Schwann cells is also known as nodes of Ranvier. So serve as the point along the neuron for generating a signal. Ini maksud ini ayat ni, sambungan ayat ni maksudnya boleh letak kat sini. The nodes of Ranvier function or serve as the point for the neuron to transmit or generate impulse. Okay, signal is impulse. So dekat nodes of Ranvier ni is where you can find voltage gated channel. Okay, so there will be a lot of numerous voltage gated sodium ion. Okay, saya tunjuk tadi kan. Sodium ion ni diperlukan oleh kenapa? Dalam neuron ni asalnya dalam keadaan resting dia negatively charged. Bila voltage gated channel ni open, it causes sodium to enter, changing membrane potential from negative to become positive. Okay, so conduction of action potential at nodes of Ranvier is called as saltatory conduction. Kalau contohnya kan kat sini kita ada neuron kan, kita ada axon, it is covered by myelin sheath. Myelin sheath. Dekat sini kita ada you all punya voltage gated channel. Okay, so at this one region here, when the voltage gated channel open, it causes sodium to enter. So changing membrane potential from negative to become positive. Dekat kawasan ni akan dihasilkan action potential. Lepas tu, dia akan trigger the next region to be stimulated and causes the next nodes of Ranvier to generate to open voltage gated channel and changing the potential from negative to become positive. Kat sini pula akan hasilkan action potential. All the way sampai dia reach axon terminal. So cara macam tu kita namakan sebagai saltatory conduction. So if we look at, selalunya kita nampak kan dalam video kan, along neurons kan. So nanti nampak macam electrical movement, electrical spark of electrical kan. So the movement from one node to another node to another nodes, okay, the impulse seems like it is jump from one node to another node. We call it as saltatory conduction. Okay. Okay, so in the myelinated axon, the function of myelin sheath are act as electrical insulator and prevent movement of ions. Dekat kawasan yang dikoverkan oleh myelin sheath, takkan ada voltage gated channel. It is covered with that myelin sheath. Hanya dekat nodes of Ranvier saja. Apa dia punya significance is that only at the nodes of Ranvier ni, the impulse will be generated. So the transmission of impulse tu nampak dia macam jump from one node to another node to another node to another node, and this will speed up the transmission of impulse. Okay. So again, we look at the first point, act as electrical insulator and prevent movement of ions, as there will be no voltage gated channel. Okay, at the area that is covered by the Schwann cell, by the myelin sheath. Okay, only at the nodes of Ranvier there will be the voltage gated channel. There, action potential will be generated. So impulse akan jump from one node to another node to another node. Saya guna istilah jump, bukan impulse tu macam jump betul-betul. Dia adalah due to the impulse that is generating at one node and then trigger the next node and then trigger the next node. Macam tu. Nampak dia letak sebagai leap tu kan. Okay, so the action potential can leap from one node of Ranvier to the next by saltatory conduction. Imagine if there's no myelin sheath. If there's no myelin sheath, all the way dia axon tu tak di cover oleh electrical insulator tu tadi, sepanjang-panjang axon ni akan ada voltage gated channel. So pergerakan ion tu keluar masuk, dia kena keluar masuk, keluar masuk, keluar masuk, keluar masuk, keluar masuk, dia lambat. Gerakan impulse akan jadi lambat. So that is the need for the myelin sheath. So the impulse can just transmit from one node to another node. Okay. So and then the next one is glia. Neuroglia or glial cells are supporting cells required by neurons. Okay. So glia nourishes neurons, insulate the axon of neuron. Insulate ni yang Schwann cell lah kan. So these are examples of the function of glia. It is to support the neuron cell. Okay, give nourishment, to insulate the neurons, regulate extracellular fluid around the neuron. So it depends on the location of the neuron. So there will be neuron at the CNS. What is CNS? Central nervous system. Okay, central nervous system. So if the glia is located at the central nervous system, it can be astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, microglia cells, or epidermal cells. Okay, if the glia is located at the peripheral nervous system, central nervous system tu kat mana? Brain and also spinal cord. Okay, kalau peripheral nervous system dia include apa? Sensory neuron and motor neuron. Okay, so kalau glia tu ada pada peripheral nervous system for sensory or motor neuron, so the glial cell we call it as satellite cell or Schwann cell. Okay, which Schwann cell which myelin sheath lah for insulation. Alright. Okay, so these are the type of neuroglia to support the function of the neuron. So this is for the central nervous system. We have the epidermal cell, oligodendrocyte, astrocyte, and microglia. Okay, and then for the peripheral, we have the satellite cells and Schwann cells. At your level, you do not have to know the function exactly of these cells except for Schwann cell for electrical insulator. Okay. Okay, so these are the glial cell to support the function of the neuron. Okay, Schwann cell je yang you all kena tahu, which is as electrical insulator. Okay. Yang lain secara general untuk nourishment, insulate and regulate. Okay. Extracellular fluid. Okay, so this is the central nervous system, which is the brain and also the spinal cord. Peripheral is motor and sensory neuron. Okay, itu. Okay. Kita, I guess, kita bolehlah stop kot our lecture for now. Kita stop dulu walaupun kita ada macam 3 jam sebenarnya nak kena ganti daripada yang saya tak ada hari tu. Kita stop dulu. Ada apa-apa soalan tak?
Tak ada.
Tak ada So please go through the notes, tengok balik and then fahamkan apa yang kita dah cover hari ni lah. Saya tengoklah kalau saya nak upload yang lecture kita ke tak, tapi yang tutorial saya dah download, saya akan upload kat channel saya ni. By today lah saya bagi, nanti saya share link, tapi saya akan upload daripada tutorial dengan S10. So S9 boleh tengok yang tu lah, saya upload satu session saja. Okay. So if you don't have any question, I guess we can end our session. So thank you class.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Okay.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Okay.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, sama.